How can we make? A lot of writing has been done in the recent past about Africa. There are certain things that Africa must do, and there are certain things that Africa must not do. The belief that we can borrow money from multilateral institutions and become rich is misguided. Zambia's Dambisa Moyo in a book, Dead Aid, tells us it cannot be done. That is the route not to take. The belief that we will follow a model that is conceived on our behalf by European universities is misguided. I want you to read the book written by a Korean called Ha Jun Chang, The Bad Samaritans, in which he argues that each country must find a model that suits our own circumstances. It can be done. I want also to remember a book which all of you must have read, written by my own Kenyan friend, Dr. Kalestas Juma, The New Harvest, in which he says that Africans must invent and innovate. I want you to read a book written by Olusegun Obasanjo and Greg Mills, among others, Making Africa Work. Africa can be made to work. But Africa will only be made to work when she is conscious of her current position. Which brings me to a question that we must now pose. What is the danger of other powers operating in Africa? Do they threaten our being? And I'm now talking about China. China is a very interesting country from which there's a lot of things to learn. But she's also a danger to the continent if we are not careful. What is there to learn from China? The thing to learn from China is that during our lifetime, the Chinese, through their ingenuity, have succeeded in lifting nearly 800 million people out of poverty. What did the Chinese do? Is there something that we can learn from them? I think there is. Those of you who have the advantage and the privilege of serving in government, ask yourself, what did the Chinese do that within our own lifetime they succeeded in doing that? And they are everywhere, the Chinese. They know what they want. I think the first thing that you must do, you must know what you want. You know, last year I was sitting and watching a Chinese news channel, and if you want to understand what others who are potentially your friends and enemies are doing, you must listen to their news. I was watching the CGTN, and I was listening to the 6,000 delegates in China sitting and thinking about China, how China will deal with Africa and the world 100 years from thence. The people who are there will not be alive. In many African countries, if you tell them to think about what will happen tomorrow, they say only God knows. No. I hold the view that when you are planning, you plan as if you will never die. And if you are prayerful, you pray as if you'll die the next minute. I'm suggesting that the Chinese have given us away. Today, the Chinese, and see how the Chinese are working with us. Which university in Africa worth its name does not have a Confucius Center? I do not know whether you have one here at UCC. Why do the Chinese have a Confucius Center? Because the mind is the standard of the man. Once you influence the mind, you can sit pretty because you can predict what the mind will do. How many of you who are the middle class today, in addition to asking your children to read French and German, are now asking and encouraging their children, go and learn Mandarin? How many of you? Confucius Center to work on your mind. On our mind. And then, how many countries in Africa don't you find a stadium built by Chinese? And if it is not a stadium, it is your state house. And if it is not the state house, it's the African headquarters. And if it is not the African headquarters, it's infrastructure, is the road or the railway. And if it is not the railway, it is 4 lorries. And if it is not those, in the next 10 years, out of every 10 phones used by you will be Chinese. If it is not Techno, it is Infinix. If it is not Infinix, it's Huawei. No African country produces a phone, none. It's only Rwanda that is beginning to assemble some. There is something to admire about the Chinese. But if we want to benefit from the Chinese, we must be strong. We must be weak. We must not be weak. We must negotiate continentally. The Koreans are also small but strong. But if we are not careful, and I'm saying this, if we are not careful, in the next 25 years, all of us will be speaking Mandarin. If we are not careful. If we are not careful. Because the Chinese here are not here for charity. The Chinese are here to do business. And in the world of business, it is a cruel world where throats are literally cut. I'm reading a small book written by a young Chinese girl called Irene Yuan-sun, The Next Factory of the World. And the young Chinese girl is saying exactly what I'm saying. He says that Africa can benefit from China. Africa can be the next factory of the world. But it's not just going to happen. Something must be done about it, which is what brings me to the last segment of my conversation, Africa Agenda 2063.